of local government, as your representative of your town. Talk to me about what you perceive as one of the issues around stigma and what potentially industry can be doing with folks like you to help improve stigma around our industry.
Thank you, Bill, for inviting me here, and Ignite for having me here as well. So, nobody in any town knows more about what's going on in that town than the mayor. And the mayors are 99% of them in the state of New Jersey, and I'm sure around the country, are mayors for the right reason, and that's doing what's best for the residents in their town. There's this thin line that we have to walk, and this cannabis question is a great example of that thin line. Trying to do what your residents wish that you do, and at the same time keeping taxes low and trying to have more ratables and get more money in to do the things in towns that they need to do. In New Jersey, we have a 2% cap now on our budgets, so we can only spend so much, and we're continually looking for new revenue sources. Personally, when I first saw this, the cannabis issue become legal in New Jersey, I looked at it from a revenue source, because in the town that I live in, and most of the towns in New Jersey, do not have a lot of ratables and do not get a lot of taxes other than what the state gives us in terms of grants or funds for our municipalities, which is not a great deal. But I think that one of the things that we've talked about before, and one of the problems that we've had in Hope. Just a real quick, I'll give you a quick example of Hope. So when this thing first came out, we put a referendum out with regards to, that was before recreational marijuana was out there. This was just on medical. It passed overwhelmingly. We had several town hall meetings. There was hardly a nay in the group. That went well. We passed an ordinance creating a zone for medical marijuana. We had people that were interested that kind of dragged with the CRC kind of dragging the permit process. And then came along recreational marijuana and things changed. I think that there's still this perception out there that what goes along with the recreational marijuana. We had people showing up, and I've read this and gone to other towns too, that with recreational marijuana comes this whole onslaught of crime and homeless people and people walking around and zombies was one of the ones that they used in us. So that kind of perception that caused a lot of problems, and we didn't do a very good job. We, meaning municipalities that really could use this and think it's a good thing to do, and the state, and quite frankly, your industry. And I still think that that's a problem today. So I think that that's where we are in terms of municipalities right now.
So how much? For you and for colleagues that you talk to at the mayor and local government level, how much is the fact that this federal government still does not recognize this, still views this as an illegal issue, how much does that impact decision making?
I think it did, as time goes on, and you and I talked about this, Bill, I think that's weakening a little bit in terms of how importance people give to that. The fact that the President of the United States right now is talking about maybe doing something about it. Well, if they're selling it on the street corner in New Jersey, it can't be that illegal kind of attitude. So I still think that that's a problem, especially in the more conservative areas in the state of New Jersey. There's still that thing, well, we're breaking the law. And is this someday going to come around and bite? If I go into a cannabis store and buy something years from now, if they decide they're going to go after people that did this, again, this is feedback that I'm getting. I'm not saying this is what I'm thinking. Is that going to hurt me someday? So to answer your question, Bill, I think the legality is still a huge problem.
So that's what you're up against when you're walking into the town. Now, some advice for folks that are here that are still looking, but also folks that are looking to expand. You talked a little bit about referendums. Not every town's going to do a referendum, but I do know a lot of folks have looked at our state vote, which we had a significant vote. 2/3 of the public came out to support cannabis legalization. And in certain towns, you could look at the breakout of the polling where you might see 65, 70% of folks. But that's not always a compelling number because those folks might be looking at the fact they support the concept, but in somebody else's town. So if I'm coming to you and looking to either expand business, opening up a consumption lounge, right, which is a newer concept, talking about something related to a growth area on the manufacturing side, what's the compelling argument for you and for your colleagues inside the town? You know, to some extent it's a little bit about support, but what about the ratables? What about improving downtown traffic? What about improving an industrial? What are those types of conversations look like?
I think it's getting a little bit easier, those conversations to have with people, and I think they're being more acceptable to it. But I think in the very beginning, it's very tough. And we talked about this NIMBY type situation. We had a referendum in our town and other towns. I'm not just speaking for Hope, but in which the referendum passed, for recreational marijuana. And then when we came to start to put it together, people would come up to it exactly what you said, Bill. Oh no, personally, I think it's a great idea, but I don't want it in my town. Put it in the town next to me. That has happened. I've talked to dozens of mayors that has happened. So there is that concern. But I think what mayors and we've got to do a better job too with our mayors' organizations, is to get mayors out there to tell their other mayors so they can tell their residents of what the economic value of this. I'm hearing incredible numbers from a town right next door to us, Hackettstown, which has, I think, 3 cannabis locations now, and what they are getting is unbelievable. And that town is running beautifully. The locations are extremely well run, and they look beautiful from the outside. 2 of them are former banks. It's something that I think, as time goes on, but again, I'll get back to this, I think we need to do a better job of getting that word out. The state needs to do a better job. The industry needs to do a better job, and quite frankly, mayors need to do a better job as well. I think there's more comfort when you have a group of people together, and I think if a whole group of towns up in our area, and we talked about this, maybe doing it and together and see how that works. But those are the things that, again, I think at the bottom line is the economics on this too as well.
So for folks that live in New Jersey, the diversity of this state. It's not just the Garden State Parkway, the Turnpike, and the Newark Airport. There are a variety of different places, including beautiful places like Hope that don't look anything like what Jersey City looks like, or look what the Jersey Shore looks like. Such a diverse array of municipal areas and different levels of government, different types of citizenry. What works here may not work in another municipality. But when we start talking about what sells in a town, I got to imagine we start focusing on job creation, right? Which to some extent retail brings, manufacturing absolutely brings. And the idea that we're going to have a manufacturing facility derived from cannabis is probably something foreign to mayors, right? They're thinking more retail or a grow operation. But now we're talking about somewhat complex manufacturing going on. Some of that may be edibles. Some of that might be just deriving from the plant oil that's really the lifeblood of the industry. We're also seeing beverages now, and you've seen some of that experience that we've been dealing with. But how much does the flip back to medical intrigue folks like you, where we're going to see the ability to partner with universities, medical research hubs here in New Jersey, and dig in on producing the next opioid step-down, anti-epilepsy drug here in New Jersey or here in Hope, New Jersey, in your industrial park? Is that something you think mayors would get excited about?
I definitely do, and I think that it's changing in terms of people that are going into people in this room operate marijuana, cannabis locations. But I was talking to a gentleman before coming in here, and he had 2 locations in Sussex County, which is a very rural, very conservative county just north of where Hope is. And he said that 65% of the people coming into his offices or his locations up there are over 50, over 60 years old, walking in with arthritis problems, going into the recreational marijuana locations and asking for that, not necessarily medical. But yeah, there's all parts to this industry. It doesn't have to be a retail location on Main Street with a sign out front. It can be, to your point, Bill, whether it's growing, whether it's hopefully a new industry starts with medical marijuana, and as more and more insurance companies embrace medical marijuana, that there's more research going on and more development going on. Those kind of things, I think you would have towns, not just in New Jersey, but around the country, standing there with open arms. So let's bring it in.
One thing I want to focus on that doesn't necessarily touch completely on industry, but it is a frustration sometimes that government at the local level has to deal with. You're not the only ones in the industry that are sometimes frustrated with your state regulator and your state government and your federal government. Our local government are too. We've talked a lot about some of the frustrations that exist in the state legislature in terms of what's going on related to cannabis and home rule. Home rule is the ability for municipalities to decide their own fate on zoning and other things. It's a hallmark of how municipal government in New Jersey operates. In addition to our CRC, which is fairly new, right? Our former executive director, Jeff Brown, would joke they're building the plane while they're flying the plane. We're only 5 years. But looking for guidance out of issues on how to deal with intoxicating hemp products, unregulated products in the market, dealing with the issue of police and fire in your towns that have access to legal cannabis products but may not be able to utilize them because they may run afoul of other regulatory rules. How frustrating sometimes is it from local government of trying to get clear guidance out of your state and federal partners?
I think very frustrating, especially with regards to the police. Just the uncertainty and the lack of definitive regulations on how police are to deal with individuals that they believe should not be behind the wheel as a result of a cannabis product or what have you. Same thing as they do with alcohol. I think there's a concern there that we don't have our hands around that, and that some police departments have actually said, well, we're not going to, if we stop a car and we suspect, we can smell it, we can suspect it, but we don't have the real backing behind us, meaning their hierarchy or the Attorney General's office in New Jersey. We don't have that backing, so we're not going to enforce it. Those kind of things make people cringe, and they are concerned as to who could be driving around out on the roads in their particular towns.
On the issue of unregulated cannabis businesses and the gray area that was intoxicating hemp that has some clarity now, there were some frustrations at the municipal level. You had opt-out towns that didn't have any cannabis businesses in their towns that all of a sudden had them overnight. None of the tax revenue, obviously. And then you had some folks, and you heard from our friends in the mayor world, that had cannabis business in town were becoming more protectionists of their cannabis businesses that were licensed and regulated vis-a-vis the folks that weren't. Now, that has changed. The federal government has acted. Our state government was the first in the nation to act on something. Are you seeing now the regulatory guidance being pushed out? I know you don't have a direct police force in your town. You work with the state police. Is that getting better? And is there guidance there on how to... We don't criminalize this effort, by the way, in New Jersey. There's a civil penalty for folks that are running afoul of our regulatory structure. We're a decriminalized state. But that said, providing that guidance to the law enforcement in your town to provide civil forfeitures if needed.
To be very honest with you, I don't think so. I still don't think it's there, and I don't want to get political here, but I think we have a change in administration in New Jersey. We'll have a new attorney general. I think that will help things and give not only the state police but local police departments more direction more confidence to do what they want to do and know that at the end of the day that their backs are going to be protected by the law in the state of New Jersey, which is directed by the Attorney General's office in our state.
We're going to keep this panel on time, so I'm going to close it out with this last question for Tim. But I want to thank our folks here at Ignite again for bringing this conference here to New Jersey. I also want to talk to everybody else in this room, too, about being evangelists and ambassadors, too. And I'm going to end with this question to Tim, is that we need to take our show on the road and go to places that we don't normally show up at. We're all here. I see a lot of friendly faces around the room, but you need to go out into the worlds that Tim and I are in on the local government space. New Jersey Conference of Mayors, U.S. Conference of Mayors. We need to show up. We need to be part of that world, too, and we need to help them do what we're doing and help advocate. So, Tim, give me some ideas and give this audience some ideas, both with the New Jersey Conference of Mayors and potentially the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where folks could potentially get involved and do more to help bring cannabis to those organizations.
I think reaching out, Conference of Mayors, League of Municipalities, Urban Mayors Association, Association of Counties, all have conventions and all have ability for businesses to get involved and to reach out to the membership of those agencies, and I think that's important. But even getting to going into local chamber of commerce, and we had and I had a group come in, state police, and another group that was very pro cannabis come in and talk to our seniors. When I raised that idea of doing that, people said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" No, but the seniors got more out of it. You could hear a pin drop in that room when both of those organizations were talking, somebody from the industry and somebody from law enforcement. Those are the kind of things, chambers of commerce, those are the kind of things that we need to do more of if this industry is really going to be successful and serve the residents that you want to serve.
Ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been amazing. I'm Bill Caruso. This is Mayor Tim McDonough from Hope and the New Jersey Conference of Mayors. Big round of applause for Mayor Tim.